And good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock, Monday, Deal Doctor live stream. Welcome. A couple of quick notes before I get into our subject matter today. If you haven't signed up for the Christmas party and you would like to go, please do. There's a lot of it's great atmosphere, great fun, nice kind of way to end the year and share the holidays with some of your fellow five-star agents. If we haven't sent out the invitation, I don't think we have, for the Con Ed program. I believe it's January 7th. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's January 7th. So we are working toward a little bit earlier Con Ed, and hopefully we'll get better weather than last year, but there's no guarantee for any weekend or weekday, any date that's going to guarantee us good weather. So we kind of took the position, let's get it out of the way, but watch for it so that you can sign up for it, make it, kind of save the date sort of thing so we can get as many of you there as possible. The focus this year is going to be on case studies that we have experienced at Five Star. We're going to do the Kahoot game like we did last year with questions. It's our plan at this point to bring in our own attorney who has represented Five Star in a number of situations, and he's going to present some case studies, and then we're going to have a little bit more. So anyway, I hope it will be good. And keep moving, and you'll be done with Con Ed for 2020 and right out of the gate. So, Sisyphus. Oh, wait, one more thing. Agents who are new to Five Star. There are a lot of places that you can get education, and I want to mention a few of them. Live stream, which we're doing right now, every Monday at 1 o'clock. Mondays with Melissa. Get curious. You find out what other agents are doing, what sometimes it's focused on contracts or whatever. The Deal Doctors, obviously, Eric and I are here for you to answer your questions, 616-490-0902. And you can always opt for a mentor, to connect with a mentor, and we'll help you do that if you feel it's worthwhile. I'll share my experience in that. When I came to Grand Rapids, I had been licensed in the Detroit market for real estate in Michigan. And when I came to Grand Rapids, I went looking for a broker who had a lot of experience. And there was a Century 21 broker. His father had started the business some 40 or 45 years earlier. He'd been in the business for 25 years himself. His trainer had been in the business for about 15 years. And he had a broker who'd been in the business and was kind of in semi-retirement, who'd been in the business about 45 years. So I thought, that's really what I want. And back in those days, Century 21 charged 50%. It was a 50-50 split. After National took, I think it was 8% off the top. So you were actually at like a 46 split. Now, by today's standards, that's outrageous because most companies are offering much more than that, even to people who have no experience, as Five Star does. In fact, I think Five Star has one of the best programs there is, financially speaking. So, but I didn't care. I didn't care about what it was going to cost me because I felt as though it was an opportunity to learn from people who've been in the business and were knowledgeable. And so for me, paying that split was the cost of tuition, if you will, to learn the business. In addition to that, I took ABR class, ePro, CRS, GRI, ABCDE. I mean, I just was, first 4 years in the business, I took a ton of classes so that I could learn the business. And work with these mentors who I had chosen to be with. So if you're new to the business, or you got to jumpstart your business, you want to restart it, whatever, I encourage you to get someone and make some arrangement for them to help mentor you in getting business and doing business. So that's all I'll say on that. I was doing some writing over the weekend, and as many of you know, I like to do. And I came upon the story of Sisyphus. For those of you who don't know, Sisyphus in Greek legend was an evil king, and Sisyphus, he was cruel, and so he was damned to hell upon his death, and his punishment was to push a large rock up a hill, only to find when it reached the top of the hill, it would roll back down to the bottom. And so he would start at the beginning, and he would push it back up the hill. And he would do this, was damned to eternity, to push this rock up the hill. And the story could end there, except there's an author by the name of Albert Camus who wrote the book of the myth of Sisyphus. And unlike others who had listened to the story, this parable about Sisyphus, Camus imagined Sisyphus smiling while he was pushing the rock and embracing his situation, embracing his punishment, without thinking of the past or the future, which was eternity. And when you start to think about it in those terms, it starts to flip. Every day, he refused to surrender to gravity. Every day, Sisyphus would push the rock up the hill, defying gravity, and no matter how evil he was, he is remembered for his labor toward his purpose. Without the rock or the effort, he wouldn't be the topic of anyone's conversation today. He wouldn't be the conversation of the topic of today's live stream. Pushing the rock up the hill is a metaphor for real estate. It is what we do every day. If anyone who's been in this business very long at all, we all at some point or another, many times, feel as if we're pushing a rock up a hill, only to watch it roll back down to the bottom, where we have to go and start all over and push the rock up the hill. Sometimes it's not fair. Sometimes it's the fault of a lender. Sometimes it's the fault of a listing agent or a buyer's agent or buyers and sellers who get cold feet or change their minds and so on. But what Sisyphus taught us is to never give in to circumstantial disappointments or try to escape from failures, but rather accept failures in the same way that we accept our achievements. So, there's a book, I think it's called Falling Forward, or Failing Forward. And there's a saying that goes, falling down isn't failure. Failing to get up is. And so, as Sisyphus did, or Albert Camus suggested, embrace the rock. Be persistent. Work hard. Never give up, and be thankful for the journey. Wow. In saying that, perseverance becomes the achievement. The outcome doesn't necessarily become the achievement, but the perseverance becomes the achievement. Showing up every day to push the rock. Now, recently, it kind of went viral. There was a Navy Admiral Commander who gave a commencement speech, and one of his key phrases, key thoughts in the speech was always make your bed every day first thing. I'm paraphrasing, but make your bed. And part of his logic behind that was that if you make your bed every day, you will have accomplished your first goal for the day. And to that, it gives you a sense of good feeling, success. Now, I disagree with this esteemed commander. My first goal of the day is to get out of bed. Now, slight difference, but it's along the same line. Anyway, Henry Ford had a similar thing to say. He said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. Believing in yourself, in spite of that big rock that you're trying to push up the hill, believing in yourself every day is, in and of itself, an accomplishment. Yesterday there was a New York Marathon, and some of those people who started that marathon were sure that they would finish, and some of those who were sure they would finish didn't. There were others who started that who were certain they wouldn't finish, and they did. And what was common to all of them is not what their time was, what their placement was. It was that they tried. They went out there and they persisted, they persevered. Whether or not they ultimately achieved the objective of crossing the finish line. Now, I'll take my own life. 30 years ago, I ran my first and only riverbank run, 15 and a half miles, whatever it was. And I trained for months, and I went out, and I wasn't sure I was going to finish. 15 and a half miles is a long way. And I was certain I wasn't going to finish when I turned at about 7.5 miles and headed for downtown Grand Rapids, because there was a wind in my face and cold rain pouring down. And my legs cramped, and I started to get cold and shiver, and started to face hypothermia, running, if you could call it that at that point, up the famous Gypsum Hill. It's not a steep hill, it's just a long hill. And everybody knows which hill I'm talking about if you've run the race. Kindly, police officers stayed behind me as I finished the race. They were taking down the barricades behind me when I finished, just to be clear. The point was, I persisted. It took me a long time to finish that race. I wasn't sure at any point, even toward the end, that I was going to finish. It was that bad. But as Sisyphus, I kept pushing the rock up the hill, despite my uncertainty. Again, this morning, the New York City runners from yesterday, they were interviewed. And the one thing they had in common was they did it. It wasn't about the time. It was that they persevered, and they did their absolute best to succeed. So, what are your goals for 2020? What rock are you going to push up the hill? Now is a great time for you to set out your goals for next year. Goals give you energy. Goals give you a purpose. Like getting out of bed or making your bed or pouring coffee, each one of those is a step toward you accomplishing your objectives for that day, one step at a time, not taking it all in one huge gulp, but little bitty bites. What are your goals for 2020? And when I'm talking about goals, I'm not talking about just real estate goals, money, number of units. What about your life? What about your family, your career, and your interests beyond your family and your career? What are your goals? Do you have any goals? You know, a couple of years ago, I was faced with, it was about this time of year, and I started thinking, what are my goals for next year? What am I going to put on my bucket list for next year? And I thought, well, you know, I'm going to be 66 years old. And then it hit me that I should ride 66 miles on Route 66. And so I said it out loud without thinking. And people heard me. And now I was committed. So for 6 months, I trained and went out and rode 66 miles. At 55 miles, the 55-mile mark, I wasn't sure that I was going to finish. At 45 miles, I wasn't sure that I was going to finish. And finally, when I got to the 66-mile mark, I was surprised. I finished. But it wasn't painless. It hurt. And sometimes we can push ourselves beyond what we can imagine is realistic. In all of the goals that I set, my family comes first, no matter what. And my kids are grown and out of the house and living their lives, and that's great. But when you have a family who is active and at home, you've got commitments for school, for extracurricular activities, you know, getting them to the football games or the basketball practice or band practice and all of those kinds of things. Your family has to be number one. Family time, marriage time, time between you and your spouse. You've got to build that into your goals for 2020 and how that's all going to fit in balance with the rest of it, which is your career and yourself, your own personal interests. You have to be whole. It's important that you are whole. How do you nurture you? Well, as you know, the answer for me is that I go down to a local coffee shop or someplace that serves Bloody Marys. I know that you all have seen it. And I take out a computer and I start writing. For me, that's my escape, me just sitting around making stuff up. And it's an escape that's important to me. And it's put a few bucks in my pocket. So whatever it is that fulfills you, whether it's in my case, riding a bike, writing, and being with my family when the opportunity arises, for you, it's something else. So build that into your goals. Make that an important part of your overarching life plan for 2020 and beyond. Now, I'm going to get back to careers. How do you measure success or reaching your goals in your career? Is it dollar signs? Is it the number of units? Is it your standing as a real estate professional? Do you want to be in the top 10? You want to be number one? Is it that? What motivates you? What can you put your energy toward? What's important enough for you to put your energy toward? And once you figure that out, then you have to break it down and say, okay, if I want to sell, let's just say 9 units this year, I'll just make it small, 9 units this year. How do I make myself accountable each and every day? How do I make my bed each and every morning, or get out of it, in order to hold myself accountable throughout the year? And how often do you check? How many appointments is it going to take with buyers and sellers for you to reach your goal, whatever that is? How many calls will it take for you to get a listing or to sit down with a buyer and talk about a buyer's agency contract or helping them find a house. Let's say, for example, it's 3 out of 10. Yeah, let's say that you do pretty well, better than most. And out of all the calls or contacts that you make, you get 3 appointments out of 10. That's a lot, actually. Usually it's a lot higher than that. So if you get 3 appointments out of 10, and you go on 30 appointments, you get 9 things, right? You get 9 appointments with buyers or sellers. If you get 9 things, listings or sale or buyer sales, how many of those will actually close? Well, if you're like most agents, some portion of them are going to fall through. It's going to be the rock rolling back down the hill, and you're going to have to start over. What's that percentage? I don't know. It depends on how well the offer is written, how well the buyers are written, and so the buyers are qualified. So let's say, for example, let's say 6 out of 10 deals that you put together actually close. Well, if you do that math, then you're going to need 40 appointments. You're going to have to go on 40 appointments, buyer or sellers, in order to sell 9 listings. Interesting. 9 listings. Yeah, you got 40 appointments. I'm guessing that a lot of our agents have not gone on 40 appointments last year. I'm just throwing it out there. So if you're doing better than that, if you haven't gone on 40 appointments and you've dropped 9 sales in the bucket, then you're doing very well. You're doing better than the average. And even so, if you start to calculate what your average commission is based on the average sales price, let's say it's 170, your average sales price is 170,000, just to pick a number, then it's going to take you those 9 sales, you're going to end up with roughly about $45,000 to $50,000 in income, somewhere thereabouts. Now, by the time you pay expenses to be in the business, you're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 gross income. Most people, especially those with families, may want to have higher income than that. So that's kind of the step-by-step process for figuring out what you need to do in order to push that rock up the hill and actually reach your goal, and recognize that that rock's going to fall back down the hill a lot in the process. You're going to experience failure. Embrace the failure. Accept that failure is part of the process for all of us. Winston Churchill is credited for saying this: never, never, never give up. It's not what he said, and there's context beyond it. And I want to share exactly what the quote is. Never give in. Never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. I want you to think, roll this back when you see it later. Roll it back and play it again. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. No matter how big that rock is, no matter how many times you've pushed it up the hill, never give in. Keep pushing. Other real estate agents can seem to be our enemy because they're not following through. They're not doing what they supposed to be doing. Lenders, appraisers, inspectors, buyers and sellers, they can all appear to be overwhelming forces against us, embrace it, accept it. When you can accept that that is going to be that rock that you're pushing up the hill, you're going to make progress. And you're going to congratulate yourself for persevering. So, never give up. Tim Creech has a question. What are 2 or 3 things you recommend to overcome those feelings of repetitious boredom? Pizza. I'm serious. When I was first in the business, we were called it dialing for dollars, cold calling FSBOs, expireds, and all of that. Just really, really fun stuff. And you want to talk about repetitious boredom. It's calling people who have absolutely no interest whatsoever in selling their house and asking them if they do. Think of how many, it's 1 out of 100 phone calls, 1 out of 100 to get 1 appointment. That's the ratio. So you get bored pretty easily. And so what we would do is we'd get a bunch of us together in a room, like a big sort of boiler room setting, okay, bullpen, and we would bring in pizza. And it broke the boredom. We had this sort of party atmosphere, this let's have another piece of pizza together, and then get back on the phones. Change it up. So that's pizza. I'm kidding, but not entirely. Change it up. I found that when I was bored calling expired listings, I would call for sale by owners. And I'd call about 10 for sale by owners and think, wow, I'm nuts. And then I'd go back to expireds. It gets you over that sense of boredom. Sometimes you have to embrace the boredom. You have to say, this is what I do. Hot dog, everything's going normal. This is what I do. And every call I make, I'm 1 call closer to a yes. Those are a couple of suggestions. Certainly, some of our experienced agents, please weigh in and answer Tim's question, because I think it's a great question. So, wow, we're almost at a half an hour. I didn't think it was going to take all of that, but remember, balance. Keep balance in your life. Persevere. Embrace the adversity. It's not, if you can't accept that there's going to be adversity in this business, it's probably not the right business for you. But if you set your mind to, well, this is unfortunate, but it's not abnormal. Press on, push the rock back up the hill, and never give up. Thanks for joining.